I think it's very important because, we start talking about all this stuff of things, if you grew up or around in the 80s and the 90s, you saw all this drug movies and this and that and the, making it look like, what a extravagant lifestyle that it was. But, from what I'm gathering from you and some of the connections here that I'm getting with the government, there's a far more nefarious thing going on here.
Wait. That is and was the real sin, is that what I'm saying is true. Listen, everybody saw Air America, I guess. The Air America, the motion picture was with what's his name? The Australian guy that's so popular. Anyhow.
Oh, you're talking about the Patriot guy and the actor.
Yeah, right. Okay,
yeah. Mel Gibson.
Right.
Mel Gibson.
Right, Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson played in the Air America thing. Air America was during the Vietnam War. It was set up to transport. Remember, we were fighting in Cambodia and all over the place where they even said we weren't, and that it was all a secret war and all that garbage. And we were in Vietnam, but then we were also in Cambodia and the associated all that part of the country over there with all these wars, et cetera, et cetera. The generals that ran the war in Vietnam, all right, they were involved with smuggling gold and weapons and drugs. They smuggled drugs out. They smuggled gold between nations. The premier, the premiers that were involved, the presidents in the Cambodia and all of that area, the Vietnam, the guy, right, Vang Pao and all these people, all right, they were running Air America, which was sneaking weapons in theoretically for fighting these wars, and they were paying for it with drugs. They were paying the generals and the generals' people with drugs, flying it out on the same plane. This was in the 60s, and that is then the Iran-Contra thing was in the 80s, that 20-year span. It was the same generals that were flying the drugs out of South America out on the planes that they had just delivered weapons to South America. It were the same guys that were in Vietnam earlier flying the weapons in there and flying drugs out. They would take $700 million worth of weapons that would be flown in for the war, split them in half, hide away half of them, $300 million worth of weapons, hide it away. Then they would report a couple months later, all the weapons that had been sent in last time on the flights had been destroyed in war. We need another $100 million worth of weapons in here. Okay, they would be paid at that level where they were delivered in narcotics that was worth 100 times what they were allowing payment on by the time it reached the streets of Los Angeles. The weapons that were split in half and hidden away during the Vietnam War would be brought out a couple of years later when we went into Angola or some other place with some more small wars where they needed another 100 million, all right? But those were already stolen and hidden in the warehouses and then resold again for new narcotics from another location. It's mind-boggling. All right, Air America was the entire. Let me correct myself. It was a story about it. It was not all of it, but it was. That's how far back it goes, and it's like I say, it's a handful of people. And now I have to give you the real caveat, and that is that the military generals I'm referring to were the guys that came into my toy factory. The partners.
What an appropriate front though for a CIA drug I guess connection gun smuggling operation as a toy factory. How fitting that is. I don't know if you're a believer in the New World Order. I guess certainly as a philosophy, I guess it's inevitable that it does exist. The nefarious part that I draw out of this story is there's two pieces to this whole drug operation. They're not only trying to make cash off of it, but I think they're really trying to destroy the fabric of American society, and I think they've done a pretty good job of that. And not that
absolutely,
I'm a libertarian at heart, but when you have people working against you like this, there is just an inevitable piece of information here that you've given us. So expand on that a little bit. I mean, what do you think that like the Georgia Guidestones, for instance, is this like the reduction of the population? I mean, what is their end game with this?
Oh, and I don't know about the Georgia Guidestones. I mean, everything they got on there certainly is kind of the mandates for the concept of one world order, new world order, one world government, and all of their needs, etc. And then also, by the way, and I can't get into all of that either, but that I discovered books that were printed in black and white by the United States government that listed all of the requirements that had to be applied to the United States of America to put us into one world government, new world order, and the steps that would do it, which included, now this was published and printed in black and white in '67, delivered in a large report to the guy that, the president that took over, Lyndon Johnson, I'm sorry, was supposed to be delivered to JFK. This report that was put together in the '60s was called the Report from Iron Mountain. It was several years in the making. Basically, it was to answer the questions of what do we have to do to sidestep the Constitution and put America into a one-world government. That report, and also they labeled it, you see, for as if it was world peace. But unfortunately, the direction to gain world peace was, in fact, world government, okay? You can't have world peace without world government. That was the idea. So that report was finished a short time after Lyndon Johnson was directly involved with killing Kennedy and took over his seat. And after doing that, it was delivered to Lyndon Johnson. Johnson classified this huge 5,000 or 8,000 page report to be classified forever, never to be released. But what happened, there was a book printed by one of the guys that was involved with doing the report, which was several years in the making. He came out, he became a whistleblower, and it was called the Report from Iron Mountain. And in that, it described what they had decided had to be done to the United States. And it included, for one thing, you had to get the guns away from the American people. That was one thing. They said that the manner by which to seriously affect for any of their projects, for example, they said they couldn't, you can't replace, or you had to replace war. They utilized war. They admitted they utilized war as a necessity, a financial necessity from their point of view, and also a manner by which to get rid of the waste material of too many young men that are uneducated. That's admitted in the thing. It's a way to clean house that way. But then they said, if we go before the people and with this world government where we no longer are worried about Russia or China and we're all in love with each other under one world order, one new world order, one world government, we have to still have control enough. So they said we'll have the United Nations Army. They will be the only ones that will be allowed to have weapons, which, by the way, believe it or not, that treaty that covers what I just said goes into effect December 24th. What is it? When is it?
Are you talking about the Small Arms Treaty?
Yeah, right. Small Arms Treaty, which basically says, now it's not going to make any difference because they're not going to have time to apply it. So don't worry about that.
Well, listen, here in the great state of South Carolina, we're locked and clocked. If they're ready to come take them, I'm ready for them to come. So however that works out, I'm good with that.
And that's a whole separate animal. But that Small Arms Agreement basically says that the United Nations people are the only ones that are supposed to be allowed to have it, okay? The armies of the UN. All right, but don't worry about it. It does go technically into effect on, believe it or not, the 24th of December. Okay, a couple of days. That's coincidental. Okay, where was I? So they said, now here's what we have to do. Now you have to understand, these people sat together with meetings for like 3 years before finalizing this report. They said one thing is we're going to always have to have a fear factor. And the fear factor for the United States always has to be a direct threat to their lives. It has to be a threat to their lives, all right? Then they will still understand that they have a need, the general public has a need for a standing army to do whatever's necessary, for them to stand behind and run behind the protection of a standing army. So they said, how do we do that if, in fact, we no longer tell the public that the Russians or the Red Chinese are going to blow us up any minute? How do we do that? So they said, well, one way we could come out and say that there's terrorism. Just how about general terrorism? And it would scare people. They could blow up buildings and do things like that, but there wouldn't be a country hooked up to it. It would just be random terrorism. All right. Now, what if we had? Now, this came out. This is in the '60s, and they literally said it'll take us 30 years to accomplish this, but that'll be one of the scare factors. We'll introduce a new thing for the United States called terrorism. Okay, end of story. That's what happened. That worked. Took them time. They also said, and this is going to blow a lot of people's minds, written in black and white, no question about it. They said if we start changing some environmental regulations for factories and back off on some of our environmental regulations, within 10 or 30 years, we could convince the American people that pollution is going to kill them. That's in black and white in 1967. We changed some laws, make it back off a little on industry, let them go ahead and screw up the sky, let them go ahead and ruin the water, and let them do all those things. And in 20 to 30 years, it'll be serious enough so that we can go in front of the people in the United States and say, as bad as terrorism, we now have pollution of the world, yeah, but of the United States.
You know what that sounds like to me, Mr. Fletcher? It sounds like that they, the socialists, the communists, so to speak, have co-opted the old 1984 philosophy of I would say the terrorists, that straw man they placed out there, but as the environmental movement. And they're using both of those things now to destroy us, from what I can see.
No, not now. You thought it was being now. It started in 1967. Is that a mind blower? In black and white, laid down as a plan that said, hey, I got an idea. We can make it look like the pollution's going to kill everybody, and that's another whole separate problem that will scare the pudding out of the American people.
So, let me ask you this question. This is man to man here. We're talking some serious business here. And I'm very respectful of veterans of that era. But how did the quote greatest generation let this happen during the '60s? I mean, honestly, that was a little bit before my time. I was born in '70. I didn't have anything to do with that. I mean,
here's the problem.
What was going on there?
Here's the problem. See, this goes back to the very beginning, and this is where you could talk about New World Order, and everybody says, well, how far back does it go? It really does go back a long ways in concept. See, after they created the Constitution of the United States, created America on the basis of this new concept where all the people voted and all this stuff and everything else, there was still, even when they were writing that and drafting it, the guys that were drafting that were the elitist. They were all the rich. They all were the landowners. They owned all the slaves. They were the wealthy elite, new governmental leaders in the United States. And it didn't take long at all for those guys, the people that are the American heroes of our nation, according to history, Lincoln, Franklin, Washington, all those guys, right, back long before Lincoln, right? But they were the elitist, and they were drawing this thing together, but they were at the same time having meetings separately from constitutional draft meetings. They were having meetings amongst themselves and saying, how do we control the banking? What are we going to do about the banking? And do we really want the people to be voting? And putting in their brothers to be up here in Washington? Are we going to get anything done? And are we going to lose control? They started worrying about losing that limited control that they had the day they signed that Constitution. And the Constitution has been under serious attack. You see, they set it up, for example, where treaties can override parts of the Constitution. That's bad news, but that's a reality.
Yeah.
They set up, we're watching executive orders being carried out by Obama, who I think is a dictator, the worst thing that's happened in years. But it's not going to make any difference when I finish my story here, when we finish Nibiru. The point is, he's using executive orders. Here's what happens. A lot of people don't realize this. The president puts in an executive order. If it's not challenged within a given period of time and rejected by the Congress and Senate, it becomes law. Period. So that's not a good deal. What is that? See, that shouldn't be part of constitutional structure of the United States. What it says, the president can make up law. And if it's not enough concern to formally throw it in the garbage on the floor of the Senate and the Congress in a certain period of time, it will become law. It becomes codified, period. So all of these things that Obama's doing, including the Cuban thing here just shortly, without telling anybody and all the rest of that stuff, I mean, and I don't know whether that's good, bad, or indifferent, but I have to study it. But the bottom line is his executive orders and executive memorandums become law if they are not challenged and thrown in the trash. Now, let's get back to what happened when Bob realized that all this money was disappearing and there was no way to launder it. Where was it going? It was going into holes in the ground, protective survival locations for the elite. I checked across the world. I found out that Russia in 2010 put out a mandate to accomplish 5,000 underground facilities for themselves in Russia. They put the mandate out that it had to be accomplished. Now, these were not necessarily as big and elaborate as the ones I'm talking about in America for the American elite, but the 5,000 were to be completed by 2013, the end of 2013, or the beginning of this year, which was 2014. They did complete them. They also completed one facility in Russia for the specific elite, and it is capable of handling, I think it's 65,000 people underground. And all of this, by the way, everything I'm saying now in fine detail is in my DVD that's available now. Right?
Yeah.
All of it.
Let's talk
all
about
of it.
that.
I want everybody to know.
Yeah.
I'm not able to fill all the details, but it's all there.
Well, I mean,
I found out that China, in the same period of time, has been doing the same thing. Now, they had thousands of underground tunneling and facilities for many years that people didn't know about in Red China. They had to go in and kind of upgrade them and utilize them in a variety of other upgraded manner, which is what they did in the last few years. I also have, which I'm not going to get into much here now, but I completely have the manner by which these underground facilities are dug and created with these giant tunneling drills that go into the side of a mountain and come back out. And when they're going in and out, you can drive an 18-wheeler down where the drill just drilled a hole.
Bob, let's pause for a second. You know, you've mentioned that DVD and multiple others. Give the folks out there, I know your website, but if they go to your website, and how can they get those DVDs? I mean, Okay,
simply go on BobFletcherInvestigations.com. It's one long word, BobFletcherInvestigations.com. You will get to my website. I have approximately I took one off recently because I have about 8 or 9 of my reports. The only thing that's on there, I don't sell hammer handles and silver liniment to rub on your hemorrhoids or any of that stuff. Okay, it's just my reports. That's all we have. The ones that are most mind-boggling are CIA and drugs, which is one that I did for Sonny Bono that got him murdered. The investigation I did into Sonny's death also is in there, his murder. I'm giving you my own recommendations. But this one right now, the one that you have to get, it's imperative, and you'll understand the interfacing and connections of all the stuff that's been going on. That's the one that's called Incoming Nibiru, or Incoming, the story of Nibiru. There's only 8 or 10 items there. And they're real easy. We take all credit cards, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. I'm not into the selling thing. You must get this. This is, by the way, a 2-disc, 4-hour presentation of motion pictures, stills, videos, everything inside, including taking a trip inside the underground facilities, pictures from Red China that people have never seen of some of their underground tunneling. They've also done a strange thing in China, but I know that it's interfaced and connected to this. Like I said, they have thousands of underground hideouts there, but they have built, at this point, I think it's 11 entire cities in China on high elevations that are totally uninhabited. They're still building new ones as we speak. These are cities, the equivalent of New York City or Boston or Philadelphia or Texas, or Arizona, biggest Denver, Colorado. These are cities all that size for multi-millions of people. There is no one living in any of them, and they are continuing to build them.
So what are you saying there? I mean, you think that
I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying.
I mean,
okay?
I mean, to me, when I hear that, I think, well, is there something going to happen, and the population that's left on Earth is going to be living over in China in these empty cities? I mean, that's the first thing.
I don't. I do know this, which, by the way, I also it's included, in our presentation, both the DVDs. But a few years ago, they did a scientific study on Earth sciences as to if, in fact, there was a celestial event that caused the Earth to move in China, what parts of the Earth would go up and what parts would go down, and where would they be if, in fact, the surface of the Earth actually was altered. That was a report that they had done themselves a few years back, and all I can say is, and by the way, some of the networks have covered these Chinese, the Chinese empty cities. They're still building them. One of them is a complete replica of Paris, France, including the Eiffel Tower, and it is empty. We're talking cities, 10 to 13 cities, finished, completed. One or two are in Mongolia, by the way. They're finished and they are completed. There are no humans in them, and they have the capability, each one of them, to handle maybe 10 to 12 million people.
Well, this sounds to me like that they're setting it up for specific groups of people to come there and feel at home.
That certainly seems like what it is. But the actual connection, Bob Fletcher's not been able to zero in on. But I do know, so you put that with, it's kind of like, what's going on, folks? Okay, so I finally figured out what's going on. Somebody came to me because I was asking people, I was saying, I have some really high-level people, friends, that's connections and stuff. And I said, what's going on now? We were talking trillions of money. The gold's gone. All the money's gone. Here's another thing that enters into this. See, Uncle Sam, in 35 years, hasn't spent any money to fix a bridge or a tunnel or a power plant. The entire infrastructure of all of America is garbage. It's all 50 years old. There's been no infrastructure money. I mean, when I say none, that's like no gold left. There's probably a little bit of gold someplace. But when I'm talking about no money, you could take a list. I think the list and again, this is off the top of my head, so if I'm wrong, don't scream at me. But it was something like, as of a month ago, 30,000 of our bridges that should be condemned as we speak. Some of them with millions of vehicles going over them every day, in and out around New York, Philadelphia, Detroit, and all these places. There's spent no money there. What's going on?
Yeah, what's going on? I mean, let's look back.
Right.
Let's look back. Go back to the 50s. Eisenhower warned us about the military-industrial complex.
And he hit it on the head.
Yeah, and we've got people on our chat right now talking about robots and this whole Internet of Things and the new the synthesis of man and machine, singularity, and all this stuff we hear. It's not even conspiracy theory anymore. It's out there in the mainstream media. Glenn Beck's talking about it. You can see it on MSNBC. Any of the channels talking about this stuff. Every week there's a show about it. It's become commonplace.
It's all real stuff.
So I guess, what are we seeing here going on? Is it the end of humanity that we're talking about? There's going to be an elite. And if there is an elite, the big question is,
if there is elite,
how far up does it go? Is it the Bilderberg group? Does it go up down to
yes.
level?
Yeah. It goes up to the level that you don't even know about. But the answer to your question in general is yes. And it goes up, and then
go on. I just can't let you go there. That I don't even know about. I mean,
I'm going to. That's absolutely right.
I mean, what is that?
And I've been doing it. Listen, I've been doing what I've been doing full time for 30 years, and I guarantee you, there's stuff up there at levels that I still don't know about, and I will guarantee you that people pulling strings, etc., that we have no idea, and unfortunately, they've gotten away with it. See, and again, all this world government, one more stuff. Planned years and years ago, they progressively, step by step by step. Now, by the way, the first DVD that I did, the first inquiry I did, was originally done on VHS, as a matter of fact, obviously, was back. I talk about, it's called Invasion and Betrayal, and it was the basic first time in the 90s when I found the Iron Mountain Report, and I found books that were written by senators and congressmen, et cetera, warning about it and writing down in black and white from the 50s moving forward, indicating the New World Order and what they were planning to do. All right, and that's also a great. It's an older report that I did. The Invasion of Betrayal, Drugs and the CIA, Sonny Bono's Destiny Denied, and the new one incoming. Those would be my recommendations for anybody. By the way, on the drugs and the CIA, we were talking earlier about all that drugs and arms and all that stuff. Drugs and the CIA is a compilation of material that I gave to Sonny Bono. He set up a special inquiry that was to begin on the floor of the Congress 15 days after he was murdered. In other words, if he had lived 15 more days, he would have been back in Washington, and they had called me already, and I was in Los Angeles. They called me and said, we're ready to go when Sonny gets back from the Christmas holidays. Are you ready to fly into Washington? And I said, yes, let's do it. And they killed him 10 days after that conversation with me. All right.
Hey, Bob, tell us just a second. You know, a lot of people out there may be, and I know who Sonny Bono is. I was a kid when he was, famous and making his way, through music. Tell us about Sonny the man. Beyond the star and the musician, what was Sonny the man like?
Sonny was a great guy, and he was honest. You see, their problem up there, he ran the local politics. He got involved, and then he decided. Somebody said, "You ought to become the congressman for our district in California." So we did. He said, "Yeah, okay, I'll run." But Sonny was still naive at that level, and but he won. He won because he was popular. He's a neat guy. All right. So like you, we all raised with him. And by the way, I was in the music business big time for 20 years before I got into the toy business. I was a promotion director for MCA Records. I introduced my job was introducing new artists. I introduced Elton John, and I was on road with The Who and every country star, Loretta Lynn, Conway Twitty. I did all of their promotions. Wow. I was the promotion manager. Yeah. Okay, forget that wonderful part of my life. Back to the horrors here. So Sonny gets in up into Congress, and they sit down with him real early, and they say, "Listen, which is this kind of speech everybody gets when they go up there, and it's pay attention, be cooperative with us that are already up here, and you'll do fine. If you cause trouble, you will not be reelected next time. Period." So then, right after he got in, they had the investigations of the Waco murders, where the government came in and burned that church down and killed all those children with the gas and all kinds of stuff. And by the way, even special operatives shooting people when they ran out of the burning church in Waco, Georgia. Waco, Texas. Okay? He sat on that. He was on that investigation. And he broke into tears and sobbed when he saw the testimony on what they did to the children. And they knew what was going to happen, that it was going to burst into flames when they put that gas in, and they knew it, and they did it, and they fried all those kids inside that building. Not necessary for any reason except to forward the New World Order concept of arms control. That's what that was for. The destruction in New York City of the Twin Towers was the same thing, and what it got us was the brand new new laws that we now live under in the United States, all right, for terrorism. And the reality is it's clamping down on Americans beyond their wildest dreams under the guise of protecting you from terrorism. But get back to Sonny. Sonny was blown away. He was destroyed. When he got up, he was just naive, and he still thought that there was some kind of an honest, moral government up there. And he found out that was absolutely not the case, and it had broken his heart. At one point in time, when I was up to meet with Sonny in Washington, I went in at one point in time, probably about 1 year before he was murdered. I went in, and Frank Cullen, the guy that runs his office for him, his administrative assistant that runs everything, he said, "Hold it, Bob, we can't even go in." And I looked in the office, in Sonny's office in Washington, and there's people with special equipment climbing all over the desks, and there's white material all over from the ceiling and all kinds of stuff. This is in the Congressional building. And I said, "What's going on?" And Frank Cullen said, "We're having to tap. Somebody's been tapping all of our telephones in the office." So you had
wow.
we have a seated congressman who was a troublemaker because he was honest, having his phones and everything tapped in the congressional office building itself, in his office. Freaked me out. We went on down, we had lunch. I delivered some materials to him that I had promised him, which is some of what I was talking about in the DVD that I did called CIA and Drugs. That was the one. It took 8 months. He finally got back to me, and they said, we're going to do the report, we're going to do the investigation using most of your materials and other people's. And that was 10 days after that phone call that I got in December. Sonny was bludgeoned to death on the top of the hill in the snow resort and the ski resort.
So what do you think Sonny would have done? What was his end game there? I mean, did he really care?
His end game was the same as Bob Fletcher's, and that was to expose what was really going on and how far up it went. The bad guys in power and in control could not permit him to begin that investigation. It hadn't become a formal event until it was planned for about, like I say, 15th, 17th of January. It would have gotten cranked up when he got back from the holidays. All right? See, now, if it had been allowed to begin, then it would have had to continue even if they had killed Sonny. But by killing Sonny, who was the pivot point of this entire inquiry, by getting rid of him before they even put the gavel down, they wiped it out. Boom, it disappeared. It's like it was never going to happen. And that was the end of it. And end of story. But I was so excited. I was elated. Boy, I said, son of a gun. I'm going to, I mean, I'd already been involved with several and saw them go no place. They don't go any place with these inquiries. It's garbage. And the reason they don't is because at the highest level of the strong arm, they get with people and they simply say, listen, Ross Perot, drop out of the race. You're shooting your mouth off too much, or we're going to send your children, your grandchildren, home in poly bags. And Ross Perot disappeared.
Oh, wow.
He didn't run anymore.
What do you think this country would look like today if Ross Perot had actually won that election? I mean, besides if they put a bullet in his head, I mean, if he had continued on, do you think he would have saved us?
Oh, I don't know. No. Can I only give you my honest opinion?
Absolutely.
As of 1963, when they blew Kennedy away, or 60, was that right? Yeah, no, 63.
Yeah.
When they blew Kennedy away, they killed all chances of this country ever pulling it out and getting straight again. It was all over.
Yeah.
Nobody. Yeah. God would have to come down himself and to straighten it up. Period. End of story.
Well, that's a great transition into we've been talking about a lot of the stuff that we can touch, and we can kind of see some of this stuff and grab onto the political nature and the digging in the ground, the tunneling and the setting up for the end of the time. But, Nibiru is a big thing, Planet X, Nibiru, it's a conspiracy topic that's been out there for years and years and years.
Sure.
A lot of people don't believe it. Some people believe it like it's religion. As a matter of fact, it's in a lot of the Bible, the Catholic Church, Wormwood, they're looking for.
That's right. Nibiru. That's right. See, that's not garbage. So you got to remember one. All right, well, let me shift back to my own situation. All right. Again, as I said, I just started looking at criminality, more theft. Oh my God, what's going on? Huge amounts of money. And I said, and I'm getting old, and I don't want to do it anymore. And then I said, wait a minute, I got to look into this. So I started looking and trying to figure out what's going on, because what had taken place simultaneously with the creation of underground facilities and all of this stuff, what had happened was a moving away from the world government thing. Bush was still screwing around with it and talking about it, talked on the UN floor, the UN, and what we're talking about here is a new order, a new idea, oh boy, doing his thing. And by the way, I have to point something out to everybody. None of my reports are partisan at all. None of my reports point one way or another. Both sides of the fence are as criminal and crooked as you could ever imagine, period. It's Republicans, it's Democrats. And there's a few independents that are probably not involved, and most of them are broke. But the point is... Let
me ask you a personal question.
Yes,
what do you think about Ron Paul and Rand? I'm a big Ron Paul supporter, and I see Rand positioning himself for the big seat, but I just don't think he stands a chance. But I'm really disappointed with his playing this week with Rubio. I mean, as far as this situation goes, is there any candidates out there that you can see that's going to at least maybe not save us, but give us a little extra time? I mean, what should we do? Should we vote for the Democrats or should we vote for the big R team? I mean, I'm really not sure.
What makes you think you vote for anybody?
Well,
what makes you think?
It's funny.
Now wait a minute. Stop. Listen to what I'm saying now.
Yes,
what makes you think you voted for anybody? Did you go in and pull an electronic thing? Did you?
I punched a button. You know where that goes?
You punched a button?
I don't know. You're right.
Wait a minute. No, I'm saying something very specific here. I was a candidate for United States Congress. All right. I ran against Bill McCullum, a bad guy. All right. Now he was recruiting mercenaries in his office in the Congress, while in fact he was seated on the Iran-Contra inquiries about the very same people he had was recruiting. Period. End of story. And that's the kind of stuff goes on people don't know anything about. All right. Anyhow, let me get back to my point. I witnessed and assisted in supplying information in one of John Kerry's inquiries on drugs and drug connections into the USA, CIA, national security agencies, etc. And he did. See, it's very hard first off to find out who's straight, who's not. So I'm not coming down. I'm not necessarily. He also was worried at one point in time. He was unable to contact me in the 80s. He thought I had been killed. And he sent the FBI in to 2 different locations to track me down.
Okay, Bob, listen, you've breached a whole other thing, and I've got to stop you right here and ask you about this. You start talking about John Kerry, and we're talking about...
Well, that's what I'm talking about. Let me finish.
Was he involved?
Let me finish. What? Excuse me. What'd you say? Go ahead.
I said, no, is he involved in this whole thing? You know, we get his little story in Vietnam. Was he in the drug cartel business back then?
No. That's why. No. That's what I'm saying. Let me finish.
All right.
Let me just finish. So I assisted him. That was my contact. I supplied him with information on some inquiries that I think were very legitimate that he was making. See, the big problem is it's hard, even at my level, where you go in and talk to people and hand them and do this, and they call you and you're back, blah, blah, blah. It's hard still to tell whether they're really good guys or not. It all has to come out in the wash. It's hard to tell. But in John Kerry's situation, his offices were concerned about my life. They sent in the FBI specifically to track me down because they were unable to reach me for 2 weeks, and they were concerned I was dead. So I liked him for that. I thought that was good. Now and I have no idea where I was. You interrupted me, and now I blew my whole thought here. Okay. What in the world was I going with?
No, welcome to Weekend Conspiracy. That's kind of the way we handle it here. There, I mean, Bob.
Okay. No. It's okay. I'm just pulling the leg a little bit, but that's the truth.
Yeah. No.
So let me try to get back to where I was. Son of a gun.
Well, no,
All
we
right.
were talking about, you were with John Kerry, and you were talking about dealing with him and getting him information. And
That's correct.
And I was curious, why did he want it? Why did he care about you? John Kerry, to me, I look at him, he's a Heinz boy. He's not made anything of himself. He's a liar as far as I'm concerned.
Kerry, here's what happened. See, everybody was interested. Oh, I know where I was going. Okay, we were talking about voting and whether you thought you were voting for somebody, et cetera. All right, so. John Kerry was the head of a Senate inquiry on drugs and the CIA. And they got a hold of me because I had already been a witness in the other hearings several years earlier with the Iran-Contra stuff. Like I said, I had paperwork in my hand that nobody in the Senate and the Congress had ever even seen. I had stuff out of their offices, for crying out loud. All right, things that they thought they had wiped out that I had gotten a hold of before they were wiped out. All right, blew them away. I sat before the chief legal counsel for the House Foreign Affairs Committee. I supplied him with 100 pages of documents. I thought he was going to fall off his chair. He said, "We never saw this, ever, in our congressional inquiries. Where did you get this?" And I could have told him, but I didn't. But anyhow, the bottom line was that was the status I had reached. So John Kerry's people, his name is Jonathan Weiner with John Kerry's office, contacted me, and I had been in contact with him for a couple of years. He had contacted me at one point in time and said, "What do you have on this guy and that guy and this guy?" And I said, "I'll find what I got and I'll deliver it to you." So when I ran for the Congress, Jonathan Weiner, John Kerry's administrative assistant, ran his office. He's now with the State Department. He contacted me, and we were talking about my running for Congress down there. And I said, I don't have the money or any of that stuff to win this, but I'm sure going to cause a lot of grief, And he says, what are you going to do if you really got in up here? And I said, I'm going to be the biggest pain in the butt that you've ever had in Washington. Now, this is 1990. He said, I got news, Bob. You are already considered to be the biggest pain in the butt we've had in Washington in about 5 years. And I said, that's the best thing I've ever heard one of you guys tell me from up there. And but to move back to where we were talking about your vote, he said they called me after I lost. I didn't lose by much, and that really freaked out the incumbent that had been in up there for 3 terms, 6 or 8 years, Bill McCullum. It freaked him out because I was within 9 points, and he spent 10 times the money that I had to spend, literally. And I was within 9 percentage points of taking the seat. And Jonathan Weiner from John Kerry's office called me, and he said, I was looking at the numbers, and he said, you might actually have won that seat because that whole area and district in Florida where you are, we had found that in some cases, every second vote that went in on the Democratic side electronically went over to the Republican candidate.
Wow.
They had confiscated the machines and found that every second or third vote on the Democratic side in the state of Florida, several districts were going over to the other candidate. It was an electronic program. And if anybody thinks, and by the way, all this stuff you can also look up if you really want to. Just look up electronic voting machines legitimacy or something like that on Google. They'll probably give you so many pages you couldn't read them. But anyhow, so my point. I was going to say my point was when I said to you, you have no idea who you voted for.
Exactly.
Maybe you did.
So yeah, as we transition into the Nibiru thing, I think it's an important thing to mention. We started this show a little bit different. I'm glad we did because, man, this is such a fantastic conversation with you there, Bob Fletcher. I've really enjoyed it. Your information, man, is legit. I sense a bit of, I talk to a lot of different people on this show, and sometimes I get a little BS involved, but I get a lot of truth from you. I get the good vibe. But I'm going to mention something here, and I from your accent, I kind of get that you're north of the Mason-Dixon line, but today is December the 20th, anniversary for the great state of South Carolina here in FEMA Region 4, where I'm broadcasting from, is when we actually seceded from the Union. Is something like that in order here? I mean, what are we dealing with? How do we go forward with even this illegitimate government? And then we've got this Nibiru thing possibly out there on the horizon. Well, what are we fighting for? What are we fighting for here? I mean, is there any fight here?
Here's the sad point. When I started this, first off, I was like everybody. I was a naive guy. I was a businessman. I've been in a variety of businesses, big industry of, in executive levels in the music business. I had my own companies. I had hit records that I produced and all that garbage. I was very much like Sonny, as a matter of fact. Our lives were very, very similar. And then all of a sudden I get involved. Let me tell you what happened. I legally, and I'm doing this for a very specific reason, legally I started trying to chase, once I found out and realized what was going on, because they tried to recruit me, you see, into the Central Intelligence Operations as an underling out there, contract agent. And they wanted me to go to Angola to take a couple of trips, and they pay $2,000 a trip. The guys guaranteed me I could make over $150,000 a year by just running around and supplying information. So they wanted to recruit me. And of course, I turned them in instead. The bottom line is, back then, I started chasing legally to try and get my money back. They owed me $250,000. Is not a lot of money to some people, but it was a lot for me. I had many years. I had a lot of years in my business to create it. I was on the verge of making millions of dollars and being happy and making toys, for crying out loud. All right. And I owned facilities in Six Flags amusement parks, retail, magic shops all over the country and all that kind of stuff. It's just nothing but la-la, happy, crazy stuff. And then I get involved with people that are killing people and smuggling drugs for a living. So anyhow, I first went to try to do something with my lawyer, hand in hand, to see what we could. I thought it was going to be an easy lawsuit. I just sue them, and they would this jerk would pay me the money. That'd be the end of it. My toy factory was classified as a secret operation, and I could not go to court. They classified my toy factory and the information and people involved in my toy company as secret, and was not able to pursue. And that came out of the president's office, George Bush.